Hi, everyone. My name is Nora Kernitsky. I'm the director of Pcapp, and I am so grateful to you all for joining us for one of our virtual tours of the 25th annual exhibition. The agenda for today is pretty casual and conversational. I will start out by giving a brief orientation to the site. I imagine by now most of you have been able to look at the online show, and Megan has added the link to the show in the chat for you to take a look at. So I will just do a brief orientation, highlight some of the features we're able to have in the online show. And then we're joined by um, actually looks like four of our art show curators this morning or this afternoon, which is really great. We'll have Alyssa, Jesse, and Brian each speak about one or two pieces that are particularly meaningful to them. And we will also have time to look at other works or if there are works of by particular artists that anyone here would like to take a look at, we can do that, answer some questions, and have some conversation about the show. So I will go ahead and get started. I am going to share my screen to do the orientation of the show, and then as each curator is talking about the works that they want to highlight, I will bring up an image of that particular work too, so that we can all look at it together. So I will share now. So you should all be able to see Pcapp's first ever digital exhibition, 25th annual exhibition of art by Michigan prisoners. And as you likely know by now, this show was intended to be exhibited in the gallery a year ago. It was just days before the show was meant to open that we had to shut down the campus and the US shut down because of coronavirus. So in many ways, this digital show is several years in the making. When you come to the homepage, what you'll see is a collection of works that really highlight the breadth of this year's show, breadth in terms of artistic method and material, subject matter, artist experience with the show. And this assemblage of works is really meant to also mimic the experience of stepping into the gallery and seeing a wall of art with a range of pieces the way that you might in the physical gallery. For those of you who want to learn more about Pcapp or the art show, I would encourage you to spend some time reading through our About page and the history of the annual exhibition. I worked closely with senior curator Janie Paul to write up these About pages that really especially give some context about the process of assembling the show. Here on this About page, you can see two photographs that were taken during two different art selection visits when our curator group visits prison, meets with artists, talks to them about their work, and makes selections for the show. So again, there's a lot more context about the history of the show there to really give you a sense of the program. The star, however, really is our artwork pages. So here what we've done, I worked closely with two of our curators, Alyssa Baginski and Charlie Michaels, to create these gallery pages that guide you through themes that are prominent in the show, that guide you through certain kinds of methods of making art, and these gallery pages, again, are meant to kind of mimic the experience of walking from wall to wall in the gallery itself as you experience each piece. When you visit a gallery page, you'll see many pieces exhibited together. If you click on the image of each piece, it will take you to a page with some more detail about that individual piece, including the name of the artist, the log number of the piece, its sales status, whether or not it has been sold yet, and this piece has. And a feature on each art page that I want to highlight is this item titled Artist Statement. So we welcome every artist to write an artist statement uh, to accompany their submission to the show. By far, most artists do provide a statement. And in the gallery, because of space limitations, we're not able to show those statements next to the piece of art um, that the artist created. But in the digital show, we are able to directly link them together. And as you view the gallery pages and the individual artworks, I really highly encourage you to read the words of the artists themselves, learn about their process. Many artists write about their experience with Pcapp, their artistic journey, moments of transformation. And it's really the best way that we can bring the literal voices of the artists into the show with us. And if you would prefer to just browse all of the works of art, you can do so on the Browse All page, which will just bring up all of the items in the show so that you can look through them at your leisure. The Engage page on the digital show has several different ways to engage with the artwork, with the artists. I encourage you to listen to the audio tour. The audio tour was created with the physical gallery in mind, so you might hear some mentions of the physical gallery, but it still applies fully to the digital show as well. And as you can see, our audio tour speakers, two of whom are also here with us in our tour today, Brian Picken and Martine Vargas, talk about their experiences as artists in the show and select works that we highlight in the tour. On our Engage page, you can also sign the digital guest book, which is such an important way for artists to connect directly to people who see the show. And I welcome everyone to leave a message. It could be for a particular artist who's really moved you. It could be for the entire Pcapp artist community. And we will collect all of those comments, print all of them, and send them to the artists who are featured in the show so that they can read the comments you've all left, read comments that you have left for their fellow artists, and get a sense of the reaction to the show. Our Artist Voices tab is where we've featured some of those artist statements that I referred to a moment ago. Here, what we've done, kind of similarly to our gallery pages, is collect statements that spoke to some of the key themes, ideas that really surface in the artist statements as a whole. So as you navigate through these pages, you'll see an artist's work next to their statement. And these themes include things like creativity, community, and I really highly recommend taking a look at the transformative power of art page. By far, I would say that is the most common theme that our artists write about in their statements, is very diverse experiences of transformation in their artistic practice. Our events page, which you are all likely familiar with since you are currently at an event, is listed here too. One thing I'll highlight that's new to the site just in the last couple of days is as we have events and record them, they're added to the site here. So for instance, you can navigate to this Watch the Keynote Address page to watch the recording of our keynote address by senior curator and exhibition co-founder, Janie Paul. The same will happen with all of the public tours that we host next week with our artist panel. So luckily it's a way that we can kind of reach more folks with our events, even if people are not able to attend the show, attend the actual event themselves. And finally, I'll just highlight the Purchase Art page. This is where you can visit to make an appointment to speak to a cashier who will be able to help process your purchase over the phone if you would like to purchase a piece of art. Like I mentioned, as people were filtering in to the tour, I believe we've sold about 25% of the pieces on the show page. But that means the show has over 800 works in it. So that means there's still plenty of art to be seen and enjoyed and purchased if that is something you would like to do. So with that, I think what I'll do is turn to some of our curators. Like I mentioned, we are joined by Alyssa, Jesse, and Brian, and Martine is also attending this afternoon. So I think what I might do first is just ask any of our curators if you would speak a little bit about just the process of selecting art for the show, what that process looks like, and then we'll turn to looking at some of the pieces that you would like to highlight this afternoon.
Y'all will allow me, I can speak to that pretty familiarly. So our art selection process is kind of a two-step process where we first have trips where we go into the facilities, we meet with the artists, get to talk to all of them one-on-one, and they get to bring us all the art that they've created over the last year that they want to submit. And we get over 2,000 submissions every year. And that first pass is really an opportunity for us to come and hear the artists get to speak about the pieces that really moved them, speak about their process in making it, their experiences as artists living within these facilities, and get to hear like, what do they want to see in the show? What do have conversations as a curatorial group and see like, okay, what do we want to see in the show, and get that first pass as really a collective conversation. And then the second pass occurs in the in the beginning of the year around January, where the curatorial group gets together and all of the pieces that we've selected on these trips are laid out. We go through them one by one. And usually if we're in a physical space, we decide, okay, is a piece gonna go on a wall or is it gonna be in a bin? How are we gonna mat it? And do a lot of those logistical decisions as a curatorial group or staff ourselves.
Thanks, Alyssa. Jesse or Brian, anything you'd like to add?
I would like to add that I think one of the greatest parts of our selection visits is the opportunity to meet with the artists, talk to them as artists and, peers, and give them feedback and constructive criticism, or, point out the things that are working really well, give them terminology so that they can learn to voice what's going on in their work. And that connection is really, really valuable. I think I could speak for most of us in saying that's one of our favorite parts by far.
Brian, I know you've experienced both as a curator and as an artist. Would you like to add anything to what Alyssa and Jesse have mentioned?
Yeah, I would say that this is my first year getting to do the curating. Obviously, we didn't get to go to any facilities, but I got to join in some Zoom meetings where we've looked at the different artwork and discussed the artwork, and to be part of the process and to see the passion that the curating team has for the artwork and for the artists is amazing. It's so much more in depth. It's so much more caring than I guess I would have thought it would have been. Everybody has such a memory for the different artists that have been in here for a number of years. They know what they like. They know what the pieces mean to the artists. They understand the visions that they've had in the past and maybe where they're trying to go in this year or any given year. So I was really blown away by the amount of passion for the artists and for the art. And then to be able to see all of the pieces, to be able to look at each one, to see the way we select things, and to see how difficult it is to say, we can only have 2 or 3 pieces from an artist, and we might have 5 or 6 or, sometimes 30 submissions. To have to narrow it down is so difficult because there are so many talented people, and it's an amazing process, and it's something I'm so glad to be a part of.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, I would just echo Brian too, and I'm just always humbled by the commitment that our curators have to the artwork, to the artists themselves. So it's a special group of people that we're lucky to work with. Um, I think now maybe we could just go in the same order that you've each spoken and highlight one or two works that you'd like to talk about. So Alyssa, is there one that you would like to start with? I can share my screen again so that we can all look at it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about The Young Old Men at KCF by Oliver Mirko. It's right there on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Alyssa Baginski. I'm currently a curator for Pcapp. I started out as, I don't know if you all know Graham Hamilton, but as his administrative assistant, as a freshman, also as an undergraduate research opportunity participant with Pcapp, and have slowly moved through the ranks. I was a student curator for a few years and now have the honor of being a full curator. And I am also one of the people who was responsible for the design of a lot of the subject art pages on the website. So after this, if anyone has any questions about that process as well, I'm happy to answer those. But first, before I speak about this piece specifically, I'd like to speak about my first introduction to Oliver Mirko's work. And I joined the show about 4 years ago, and he had a piece in a similar impressionist style called Prisoner in a Field of Flowers. And it was done in a similar palette with those same sort of soft tones. And it was just a man like laying on his side in a field of flowers, but in a prison jumpsuit. And what struck me about that piece was the humanity and the peace that could be applied to a subject matter that is so usually associated with a lot of pain and even like violence at points from my admittedly limited understanding coming into this sort of world of incarceration. And it was really that humanity that struck me and has been something or been a vein that has run through the entire show, all 4 years that I've been a part of it, and has made me the most proud of getting to participate in this show, is that in every piece, there is a level of humanity that is so often forgotten or intentionally erased in this population of people. And so I think Mirko's work does a really amazing job of highlighting that humanity. So for specifically this piece, one of the things that struck me about it was first the mundanity of the subject matter, in that like almost every trip I've been on, we've taken a walk through the yard and you would see something akin to this image of, you know, men, young and old, milling around, passing time, talking to each other, working out, having conversations. And in regards to the subject matter itself, it's perhaps, I've heard people say like, oh, it's not that creative. Like this is just a day in the life. And I think that the mundanity and the piece that the subject matter evokes really shows how these people are experiencing, like there are individuals and humans that experience this, and it's not something that you're like, oh, you're seeing on TV that is sensationalized at every point, and not every step of the process is something that is like a large heroic act. It is day to day, like these are just lives that people are trying to live, and they happen to be doing so in these facilities. And I think that level of humanity and humanness is again something that's very largely missed in the narrative surrounding mass incarceration, and I love how his work really brings that to the forefront. And the other aspect of his work that I'd really like to highlight is the color palette that he's been using for the last few years. I don't know if he's always done this, and perhaps Martine can speak to it a little as well, as I believe Mirko is one of his pupils. Mm-hmm. But for the last couple of years that I've been familiar with his work, he works a lot in the kind of blue to yellow tonal range, mimicking the uniforms of the prisoners. So they have to wear, or the incarcerated artists, and they have to wear these large bright jumpsuits with these orange stripes on the back. And if you've been to the facilities, you know that there's not a lot of color in these facilities. It's a lot of beiges and creams and eggshells, and then you have this bright blue and bright orange. And it's a running theme through a lot of the work in the show. You see it come in different places and in different palettes. But I think the softness of a Mirko palette, again, really brings a level of calm and humanity to this lens that he is trying to impress upon the audience, in that like these experiences then color the way that you look at the rest of the world. If you are walking through this scene, it'd be a lot more beige than the way that he's presented it to you. But I believe, or the way that I've interpreted it, is that he is trying to impress upon the audience that the experience of incarceration is then something that colors the way that you look at the world. And even though it changes the way that he sees things, he's trying to press upon the audience that for the few seconds that he holds your attention, it's going to be the way you see it too. And so that underlining experience and perspective is something he's really trying to get across and have the audience experience for those few seconds that he does hold their attention. And those are two of the aspects I want to highlight. I don't want to ramble and want to give enough time to the other Pcapp curators, but I am, anyone who speaks to me for more than like 5 minutes knows that I'm a big fan of Mirko's work, and I think it's a really good example on a lot of fronts for a lot of the themes that run through a large amount of works in the show.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I know I learned so much from your comments. One thing I just want to highlight, also a feature of the digital show, is because of the quality of the images that we have featured in the exhibition. If you're viewing each artwork, you can zoom in and really see a level of detail that even in person in a gallery would be hard to see. So here, for instance, you're able to see Mirko's incredible brushwork and really those individual blues and oranges that Alyssa was just speaking about. And it's, at least in my experience, unusual to get that intimate with a piece in a gallery. So it's been an exciting addition to have in the digital show. Jessie, did you have a piece that you wanted to start with?
I do. I am going to do Rick's Suffragette City. So this piece is pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to look at, a lot to take in. Before I start on my thoughts on that, I'll share a little bit about myself. I'm Jessie Butts. I am currently at work at my day job at the hospital. I'm a bedside artist. And I've spent a lot of my life working with sort of outsider groups, adults with mental illness, working in inner cities. And so this seemed like sort of a natural progression for me in supporting those who often feel unseen or unheard. And it's been a really, really cool experience. I've only been part of Pcapp for 2 years, so I haven't been on many visits, but the ones that I have are so fulfilling, and the connections are really phenomenal. So I'm thrilled to be a part of this group and to have the ability to talk about this piece. So Rick, capital R-I-K, is what he goes by. And all of his pieces have this sort of same sentiment, this very dense, just absolutely rich landscape of all of these characters and hidden symbols. And one of the biggest things that drew me to this piece is that I also love symbolicism in my work, and sort of demanding that the viewer take a closer look. I mean, this is so dense that this is a perfect piece to zoom in on. I've been looking at it for days and just looked again this morning and found a ton of new things that I hadn't noticed before. And some of the things that really draw me to this, one is the immediacy of the work. This is pen and ink and watercolor. There's not a ton of room for forgiveness, unlike oil or acrylic, where you could just, really make the paint dense over top. He has chosen to really, I don't know if it's consciously or subconsciously, challenge himself with these materials by, just going for it. And I love that there are no sort of less than spots. Everything has the same treatment, the same amount of detail. He really takes care of what he's doing, and he really puts the effort into the whole piece. And it's been a great experience speaking with some of my fellow curators over the last couple of days about his piece. Rick has been a part of this group since it began. So he's been showing for 25 years and has developed a close relationship with Janie and a lot of the curators. So he is adding some to Janie's book, and she was kind enough to share some information with me. And what I found fascinating is that I was talking to a friend this morning about how this reminds us of Hieronymus Bosch. And then I read his statement, and that is totally one of his biggest influences. So that makes sense, and he nailed it. But I wanted to share that he also says he's deeply influenced by Dutch painters Peter Bruegel the Elder and Hieronymus Bosch, and also comic books. He grew up in Belgium until he was 12. So he shares a lot about, his experience going to museums and really studying the etchings at the Royal Museum. And one of the things that really moved him was all the little secret messages that were put there to sort of criticize what was going on publicly. And so you'll see a lot of political themes in his work. Suffragette obviously is a term for women voters that has been, used to be derogatory and has been reclaimed by them. When I look at this piece, I see moments of that, but I also see moments of our greater struggle as a society. This idea of sort of themes of political, suffering and politicians not being held to the same standards as the rest of us. And I mean, even just these Egyptian runes and things, I think it's clear that he's very well read and very, up on what's going on with society. And he's got a lot of incredible symbolism that I don't even begin to understand. And that is one of my favorite parts of this. He really expects the viewer to take the time to decode this, because there is an actual answer to this piece. I don't know if answer is the right word, but there is a code that is meant to be figured out. And a couple of years ago, a young man decoded one of his works by using all these symbols and numbers, and he wrote a letter back to him in code, telling him that he solved it. And apparently once he gets to know you, or once you solve his code, you become a character in one of his pieces. So a lot of these characters you're seeing, even down to crayons, are typically certain people. So it's my goal to one day solve this code and be a crayon, or a lunchbox or whatever. So it's really, I love the idea that this piece requires you to spend some time with it and to really study it and give it the attention that it deserves. And one of the other, just to sort of touch on the code, one thing that he wrote was, for instance, he uses ants in a lot of his pieces, and he said that that is an acronym for automatic negative thinking. So that just shows you how deep some of this code goes and how it really requires you to delve in and spend some time. And then another thing that I think is just fascinating about him is that I don't know if it's still current, maybe Martin or Alyssa have some insight, but he has suffered vision loss due to cataracts. And so his use of color is sort of a memorization system. It's not really, just as easy as it would be for many of us to say, okay, I want this color. So he uses that, some system of memorization to color his pieces. And I love that he doesn't neglect the color because he can't see it very well or because it makes it more difficult. He delves into it and he finds a way to adapt. And I think that's really spectacular. And for the sake of not taking up a ton of time, I just wanted to also comment on the fact that he really, this is a landscape of political, commentary and all of these things, but there's also a lot of his life and the fabric of who he is in this. He includes a lot of 80s song lyrics, which he's a fan of. And I'm assuming a lot of the sort of pop culture characters are, something that he's responded to in his life, something obviously that he's experienced. So I just find it so fascinating that he's put so many layers of complexity into this. And as an artist, one of the things we're taught is, all right, when you create a piece, you want to focus of a subject, you want to kind of draw the eye to a certain area, and he doesn't. If you look, I mean, there's not really one spot where my eye just goes and stays and rests. And I think that was so smart because it really allows your eye to flow through the piece and really study those symbols and all the tiny details. And I just think it was a really intelligent way to approach this. So yeah, I could go on and on, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I'm so grateful that you highlighted this piece. And this coming fall, there are a number of Pcapp artists who will be featured in an exhibition at the Michigan State Broad Museum of Fine Art. And Rick is one of them. And actually Suffragette City is going to be in that exhibition. And I'm also happy to say that Rick will be home to see it. He is recently paroled, and we couldn't be more excited to welcome him home and back to Pcapp. So thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, was there a piece that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I'd like to highlight a piece from Jamal Biggs. It's self-portrait, free inside. That's it right there.
Perfect.
All right, so yeah, this is the piece I want to talk about, but before I do, I want to introduce myself. My name is Brian Picken. I was incarcerated for 17 years. I just completed my first year out of prison. So it's really nice to have that milestone. I'm doing really well, adjusting really well. So life is a lot more fulfilling on this side of the fence than it was there. So it's good. I'm thrilled to be a part of Pcapp, to be able to do some curating with the Pcapp program. They were a huge part of my life inside, and now I get to see the other side of it and get to help, do whatever I can to make somebody else feel good inside, to make sure that they get the same kind of care that I received when I was inside and needed that. And I think this is a reason why I chose this particular piece. Jamal Biggs, he's done this incredible piece here on a self-portrait, just himself there. There's only the one figure inside, and he's sitting inside this prison cell, and you can see on either side of him the two different beds that are there. The two mattresses, the blankets, that sort of thing, a window off on the side, the bars in front of him. But he's sitting down, he's meditating, he's thinking, he's reaching out of himself, reaching out from his current situation to find something happier, to be in a better place. And I think, Jamal said in his statement that he's been inside for 30 years, which is an incredibly long time. It's a difficult place to be. And it's a difficult place to keep your humanity. And I think this is what his work is about. He talks about his journey of growing up and his journey of self-discovery, self-forgiveness, moving forward in life, centering his life the way that it should be, is what he talks about there. And this is really what the piece is about. It's what the piece centers on, and it's readily obvious when you look at the piece itself, that he's centering himself here. You got these rings of this water. Everything's kind of moving out from the center versus being off-centered, off-kiltered, which is where a lot of us started off at when we went to prison. Coming inside, you are immediately aware that your humanity does not matter. You lose your sense of identity. It's sort of like you die. I know that speaking to a few different family members, when I went inside, it's as if I died. You know, they had to clean the house out, they had to pack up my stuff, you know, they had to mourn, this sort of thing. So it was like a death for them, but it's also a death for the inmate, because they have to lose so much to go inside into this mass incarceration that America is so proud of. The individual loses a huge portion of themselves, and a lot of people, for a lot of inmates, it's very difficult to find a center, to find a way to move forward. And I think this is what spoke to me the most about Jamal's work, is that he's found that center. He's found a way to move himself forward, to keep himself aligned, not only with himself spiritually, mentally, but to align himself with the world as well. And that is the most difficult aspect of being inside. And I think that's really what spoke to me when I seen this was, out of everybody that I knew, everyone was searching for a way to feel normal, for a way to be sane for just a moment. When you look at some of the other pieces, you see people outside sitting by the fence, like in the first piece that was discussed. People will sit at the picnic tables and they'll talk about whatever, talk about conversations they have with their family, an upcoming visit, anything that normalizes an individual. This is what the vast majority of conversations are in prison, is looking for that normalcy. And I think that Jamal has found a way to depict this in an incredible way. It's so obvious what he's doing here. The beautiful blue sky in the background with the subtle clouds shows that serenity that he's happened to find. If we could get other people inside to find that same level of security within themselves, it would be a better place. There'd be a lot better people coming out of prison. It'd be a lot easier to survive inside. But I think this is the main reason why I chose this piece. It's just because of what it represents and what the artist, what Jamal is trying to convey. It's just that sense of center. And I think that people in the outside world, people that are around me, they're not always centered either. Finding a center and figuring out where you start and where you end and where somebody else starts and ends is really important in life. To not give too much of yourself away, or to not expect too much from someone else, but to be able to be centered. It's a much more fulfilling life. And I believe that's what his point is here, is you can be happy no matter where you are. You don't have to be in any particular place or really in any physical perfection. You can be happy the way you are if you center yourself. And I think it's an amazing message.
Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you all for sharing such a diversity of pieces and so much insight about those pieces. We have about 15 or so, a little bit over 15 minutes for questions for our curators, for conversation. So I would welcome anyone who'd like to ask a question. You can unmute yourself and ask it, or type your question in the chat. And we can talk about the process of putting the show together, specific pieces if we'd like to look at some more pieces together. But yeah, the floor is open. Yeah, Brian?
Can I just say really
Please.
quickly, you spoke about signing the guest book.
Mhm.
And I just want to say that from somebody that was inside, when those packages arrive and you see that package of information where people have signed and they speak about the specific works and they address a specific artist, everyone devours those packets. They absolutely love it. It's like gold. The more people that sign, the more people that send a specific message to any artist, it's something that lifts them up for weeks. It's so nurturing to the soul inside. I would encourage everyone to write a message to as many artists as you feel, uh, that many artists that have touched you in some way. Please, it's very important.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm going to put the link straight to the guest book in the chat so that you all have it at your fingertips.
There was a question that somebody had about whether or not he could get cataract surgery in there. I would say that getting any kind of surgical procedure is more difficult than pulling teeth.
Mm.
It is really, really hard to do inside, and it takes a long time and a lot of fighting to get something done. They consider that to be cosmetic inside, and they don't do cosmetic surgery. So, unless he lost both eyes, they wouldn't do it.
Thanks for sharing that, Brian. Such an important reminder how different access to medical care is inside. We have a question from Gillian to all of our curators. What was one of the most difficult pieces for you to process emotionally?
I think for me, it's more cumulative group of themes, like especially the ones where it just rips your heart out. You can tell how much they miss their kids or how broken down they've become as a person. And it's really heartbreaking to witness that. But at the same time, I'm grateful that they're getting it out onto paper or whatever form. So for me, at least, it's more of a group of subject matter that is really tough.
For me, it's not necessarily individual pieces because of their subject matter, or even necessarily what's been written about it. I have been fortunate enough to go on more than my fair share of trips. And so the pieces that have been the most, perhaps difficult might be the wrong word, but have required the most emotional processing for me are those that I've had the opportunity to speak to the artist about. And some of those conversations are very like strictly about art and are very like intellectually driven, and we talk about form and color and practice and lines and shadows and are very much intellectually stimulating, and some of them are very emotionally moving, and I won't do them the justice of necessarily sharing their personal experiences, but I have like cried with fully like grown men and women in these facilities as they've just told me their life stories and what motivates them to continue to create and to continue to move forward. And so for me personally, the pieces that have required the most emotional processing are those that have come along with those conversations and truly getting we're only there for a few hours, but even within a 20-30 minute conversation, if your intention is to get on a really deep level with somebody, you can absolutely achieve that. And some of those conversations are devastating in the best way possible, and have completely changed the way that I like go about living and look at the world. And I know that sounds cliche, and I know that sounds like you know, life-changing experiences don't happen, but they absolutely do, and this is absolutely a space that that occurs in.
I'd like to say something on the powerful art that comes from lack, actually, of being artistically inclined. The pieces that move me the most are the ones that tell the stories of pain or of growth, the stories about the environment. I spoke on a piece the other day about a young woman, transgender woman, who was inside and was having all those difficulties in her life of coming out and telling somebody that she was transgender. And they really moved me. The art was crude in a sense. Some people would say it's just refrigerator art, but the pain that you see in that little piece that is not detailed at all the way the pieces that were selected today were so fabulously technically created. But this woman created something with just a line drawing. And it just moved me so much because, you know, she called it, "This is who I am now," or something along those lines. This is me at last.
The real me
like
at last.
The real me at last. I mean, that was just so powerful to me because you don't have to be so technically skilled to create good art. You have to be willing to tell a story, to give a message. You know, the letters BLM, you know, I mean, is that art? You know, they're just letters to some people, but, you know, I mean, to some people, it's a whole story. So when an artist, it doesn't matter how technically skilled they are, produces work that really presents a powerful message, that to me is great art. And those are the pieces that move me the most.
Mhm.
And they're painful to me, they're painful.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, sorry, Nora. Just to carry on with what Alyssa pointed out, that's a really poignant point that I feel the same when we go on visits, which I've been on very few, but you get into these conversations and people start to pour their heart out. And then, you know, because we want to make sure everybody is seen and heard and spoken to, you know, you often have to go. And so for me, I think that's my goal is always to humanize people and make them feel like we're engaging, you know, and really interested in what they have to say and share. And when you have to leave, it's like, oh, I just want to, you know, you can't hug each other or anything, but it's very difficult to see somebody in that emotional state and not be able to reach out or, you know, give them more.
One more short sentence, speaking about Elisa's piece that she selected. Mirko is a fabulous artist. He is technically skilled, but people have to know that he started out knowing nothing, absolutely nothing about art, not a thing. He was scared to pick up a pencil or a brush and touch the canvas. He was literally scared. He did not want to mess things up. But in a few short years, really a few short years, look at the work that he's creating. Yes, there is a mundanity in the environment, as Elisa spoke of, but look what he's created with that mundane environment. He loves color. His pieces are full of life and full of light. Even that piece, that is a mundane environment. It is sad, it is dreary, it is gray in there, but look at the light that he put in that particular piece. You look at that piece and you don't see it as mundane. So that is art. That is, I mean, you're creating a story out of a place that is just dreary and dark, and you're showing light in there.
They are so striking. I always stop and linger on Mirko's pieces. We have a question from Laura about how the exhibition is shared with artists inside. So, Brian's already spoken about receiving the guest book and all of the comments. We also create every year a DVD featuring a slideshow of every piece of art that's in the exhibition. And we send copies of that DVD to every facility so that artists and others there can view the show and see the work that's been exhibited. But I wanted to welcome Brian and Martine to talk more about what the experience of the show from inside was like for them.
Sure, probably I'll say something. The show inside, you wait every year. You wait for this. Everyone talks about the show. Everybody's excited about it. We all bring our pieces out. If we're not in the same housing unit, we'll bring them outside. We show each other the pieces we've got for the show. You get over to wherever they're going to do the exhibition at, in the gym, a schoolroom, wherever they happen to do it at. And you get to see everyone from the university come in. And it's an incredible moment because everything else sort of melts away and you become human again for that hour, 2 hours. You get to sit in that room and you get to talk to people, and everyone treats you with respect and common decency that you're not getting. So you're feeding voraciously off of this energy that you get in the room. And when you leave, everyone is excited. They talk about it for days, sometimes weeks. We talk about it. We wonder what the show is going to be like, and everybody is waiting, and they're antsy as to what kind of an answer we're going to get. Sometimes people will get pictures. Their family will send pictures in from the show, so everybody gets to look at the pictures, which is great. But the big wait, of course, is for the packet of information, to see the comments, the guest book, any sort of pictures they send, to find out whether or not you sold your pieces. It's a good experience. Most of us wish there was a little bit more inside. We often would have liked more of an update to know what was going on, but it's an incredible experience from the inside.
That's right.
What I can say about that is from a different view. Artists inside are all year, actually almost every day, are engaged in art in some way or another, either talking about art, reading about art, trying to create sketches of art, coming up with ideas for art, talking about art in the yard, in classrooms, in the day rooms, in the hallways, in the cubes where we live, either 6-man cubes, 8-man cubes, 2-man cells, wherever we are, where artists are doing this. We're always constantly talking, because we're passionate about art. When we throw ideas at each other, somebody might say, well, I want to do a painting of a dance scene. Well, if you're talking to an artist, then that artist is going to give his or her opinion about what a dance scene should look like. Oh, is it going to be ballet like this? Is somebody going to be holding up over their heads? No, dude, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like slow dance, or I'm talking about hip hop, or I'm talking about this or that. Oh man, you don't want to do that. Do this instead. So there's collaboration. There's confusing discussion. It's engaging though. They're engaging about this. Eventually, the artist that comes up with this, whatever idea he or she has, is going to do what he or she wants. But they're getting so many ideas from other artists, and some of those ideas are incorporated into the piece. So it's an all year round thing. When the videos that Pcapp sends into the prisons every year show up, and we are looking at those videos, we're looking at what every artist that has contributed to the exhibit has done. And everybody is staring at not just the people who are in that same prison, but at all the rest of the prisons throughout the state. So we are engaging literally with every artist in the prison system. And we're talking about, oh man, did you see what Mirko did? Man, I'm going to do something like that. Or what about what Rick did? Oh man, Rick is whack. He is nowhere. He's just doing cartoons. Or what about Vargas? Oh man, you don't want to do fat people like that all this. Man, who wants to paint fat people? You know, so there's discussions, engagement about artists in every single prison when we get those videos. And it inspires and it motivates the artists to create, well, I'm going to do something better than Mirko. He did the yard scene. You know, there's no cello playing out in the yard that we have. I'm going to put an elephant out there. They are constantly creating and getting motivated by all the art that is contributed to Pcapp. Yes, the selection processes are fantastic. They're great, but they last just a minuscule amount of time inside that prison yard. Once the selections is over and people are gone, you know, we go back to living in our mundane lives, as Alyssa pointed out, but we're creating up here and on, you know, on sketch pads, on our canvases or whatever. We're constantly creating. So artists inside, we have the time to do that. If we were out here like I am now, we don't have 8 hours a day to concentrate on art. We might have an hour a day to do that, but it's amazing the passion and the energy in artists inside.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our curators. I know I learned so much this afternoon. And, you know, we're right at 1 o'clock, so I will kind of bring us to a close. We did have a question in the chat about how pandemic has impacted our program this year. The short answer is significantly. But you can keep an eye out later this summer at Pcapp. We'll launch another digital exhibition called the Pcapp Miniatures Show, which was the program that I shouldn't say we, our wonderful curators really innovated this year, welcoming artists to mail art that is smaller than 4 by 6 inches. So art that can fit into an envelope. So I know it's going to be really gratifying to see how artists, you know, exercise their creativity in the confines of that small space. So stay tuned. And yes, please again, thank you all for your attendance this afternoon. Please spread the word about the show, make an appointment to purchase art. Next Wednesday, we'll have another public tour featuring other of our curators. Next Thursday evening at 7 o'clock, we will have a panel of Pcapp artists. So I hope to see some of you again soon. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.